and sort of leaving it, and it's a very difficult kind of, what do you do with it? And, you know, you can almost be certain that once you go into it, a whole bunch of people who might have possibly taken you seriously before will immediately, you know, not. I mean, you look at Naomi Klein's book where she's writing about the shock doctrine, and, you know, the whole thesis is using shock as a time to rearrange all the positions. And this has got to be, you know, this was truly shocking. And that is a real stretch. The idea that 19 Saudis did this, you know, I could go into detail about it, but that is a crazy conspiracy theory. That is a really, you know, a great stretch of credibility to try to believe that. Yeah.
No, I live in Chase.
He's from New York.
I'm a New Yorker. I'm from New York. Do you? Oh, cool. You're just around the corner. As far as, you know, Canada goes, yeah, I mean, you can go 100 miles to the next city, you know what I mean? So 50 miles is like right around the corner. But good to see you. Good to meet you.
So if you go to 9/11, if you go to Google videos and just type in, do a search on 9/11, there's dozens and hundreds of documentaries put up on the web about this subject, and maybe at the end we'll play some bits of ripple effect here and see the buildings going down and whatnot in slow motion and isolation. And but Loose Change was one of those that had a lot of attention. Many people went to it. It was sort of the zeitgeist of its time. So people in force are you know, investing their money and just feeling they've got to say this and that about 9/11, and 9 out of 10 are exposing what the makers of these videos and these websites believe to be the lies put out by the official version. And there's no official process going on now. There's, you know, the 9/11 Commission happened. It was chosen by Bush. So you know, this is a murder scene. Was there a proper investigation of this murder scene? And we were just told right away, Osama bin Laden, 19 Saudis, Al-Qaeda. And, of course, this not only serves Larry Silverstein, who picks up a white elephant that's contaminated with asbestos and gets a big payoff, not only serves, you know, Giuliani, becomes a kind of hero, it justifies this whole infusion of military energy into the Middle East, into those zones where the oil is rich. And surprise, surprise, the connections between oil industry and military industrial complex are old and developed. How did Rockefeller make his wealth? Well, there was a certain Standard Oil of New Jersey. Rockefeller was very Machiavellian in monopolizing the oil industry. So when we talk about the 3,000 dead, I noticed 2,300 used. How many dead in Iraq? How many American soldiers? How many Iraqis? How many being tortured in prisons in the name of the war on terror that we've never heard their names? We don't know where these black sites are, the sites of black operations. And, you know, if you don't happen to have an Arab sounding name or a Muslim sounding name, you might feel there's a certain protection, but think of the tragedy for those people in Europe, in America, with Arab sounding names. I mean, the mobilization of fear and the branding of a whole religious group and a whole huge portion of the global community, and suggesting that somehow this thing called terrorism is unique to some kind of certain people, and that the religion is somehow responsible for these World Trade Center going down and building on that. It exceeds kind of your wildest fantasies of, and yet we're living through this. And, I could be wrong. Splitting the Sky could be wrong. Just trying our best to make sense of the world as it's explained to us, as it's manifest. But, this is a university. And what do we have universities for? I mean, isn't our primary responsibility above and beyond anything else is to try to distinguish the truth from what is false? The truth from what is false. And we give ourselves, in theory, lots of latitude to have debates between people who have different views about what is true and what is false. And that's what we're trying to do. And thank you so much, Splitting the Sky, for taking us through this. So I'm going to tell this story of Giuliani. Splitting the Sky's told it, but just to reiterate. So I see this article among all this stuff I see about this fellow, and there's Giuliani in a looking angry, and he's on the cover of the New York Times, and he's got an issue, and his opponent, who's also running for mayor of New York, once had a party, he alleges, when Splitting the Sky got out of prison. And so it's depicted as if this liberal, soft on crime woman, look at what a scum she is. She has a party for the likes of him, a cop killer. I mean, that's basically the story in the New York Times. So this is when we talk about get even time or something. This issue, I guess, of Giuliani to build his political career, building this man here into that image, which I saw myself in Canada in 1995 when these Aboriginal, Native, original people making their stand at Gustafsen Lake, 18 people, were being depicted in the media day after day as terrorists, as nut bars. And their lawyer, Bruce Clark, who has a PhD, he's a lawyer and has a PhD, has got a very powerful legal argument. He's their lawyer, and they're depicted as terrorists. So Giuliani is playing this same card, and that's the background. Yeah. You want to get back into the buildings now?
And Giuliani.
What's that?
What was it he said in Florida? I missed that.
Oh, what he said in Florida was this. He said he was running for president, and what he says basically is that his platform for running is to make sure that we stop Islamic terrorists from hitting the country again. Now,
the most important issue in the United States today is to stand up to something called Islamic terrorism. Islamic terrorism. So not terrorism generically, but a particular variant, which is called, just imagine the implications of spewing that out as the most important issue.
And I'm concurring with both Morgan Reynolds and many other peoples, and the peoples from that San Diego, shadow grand jury, that basically said Giuliani was a part and parcel of the plot to kill those people in New York. Whether they like it or not, I'm saying it. Do what you want to do. Don't worry about suing me because I ain't got no money for you. Now, the only thing you can do is just riddle me with some bullets, but that's okay. My day's got to come, and everybody's got a date with death anyway. So if that's what you need to do, do it. All right? Just do it. All right? Because if they can do that to 3,000 of their own, and then the extended amount of people that are killed are 4,000 U.S. soldiers, right? Then there's 80 Canadians dead so far because of this bogus war on terror, right? And then there's thousands of Muslims that were apprehended and then taken by the CIA in what is called extraordinary rendition, and then taken across into torture-friendly countries like Syria, Lebanon, Egypt, and the like, and thrown inside torture camps like Maha Ara from Canada here, right? And thrown into a dungeon and tortured for a year and years, and then be sent down to Guantanamo Bay, all kinds of torture on this bogus war on terror. Do what you gotta do. But don't be surprised if you meet resistance with resistance. It's the name of the game. Now, I think more than Muslim terrorists. I believe there was at least one Italian terrorist around 9/11. And that's Mr. Giuliani. And now, talking about an Italian terrorist, here's the president, the former president of Italy, who orchestrated a false flag operation in an operation known as Gladio.
Now, a false flag operation.
Hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. That's my alter ego. Sometimes it gets out of order. Hold on.
Not everybody.
Ex-Italian president, intel agencies. No, 9/11 was an inside job. Here's a guy who basically states, the president of Italy, the former president, says, and his name is Francisco Consiglia. There you go. This man says 9/11 was an inside job. Thousands of people have said it's an inside job. Point blank. Okay? Now, the point I'm making here with Giuliani.
Okay, let's just say, for instance, Mulgrew tells us in his articles comparing this all to the X-Files and whatnot. He said, I wonder why many questions are not asked. In Germany, a former minister of technology, Andreas von Bülow, made when in an interview, he dismissed U.S. government's explanation that Osama bin Laden's Al-Qaeda network is responsible for the attacks. He dismissed it. His own explanation implicated the White House. I wonder why many questions are not asked, von Bülow said.
That's really El Ciaeda.
For 60 decisive minutes, the military and intelligence agencies let the fighter planes stay on the ground. 48 hours later, however, the FBI presented a list of suicide attackers. Within 10 days, it emerged that 7 of them were still alive. Yeah. So this is the Minister of Technology in Germany, not exactly a marginal figure.
Now we come to the next shocking revelation. You know, there is a thing called mind control. There's a place called the Tavistock Institute. Have anybody ever heard of Tavistock? Must have heard of it. Okay. All right, anyway. There are a lot of Tavistocks around the world, and these are mind-controlling institutions, man. One of the major programs of any mental facility in dealing with population control, is the effect of shock therapy. Anyways, on 9/11, we were all thoroughly shocked. The point I was getting to earlier about the thermite is well established, and we're going to show you some film here in a little bit of all the explosions going down. There's no question about it. There's another, I don't know if if you get a chance, I want you to Google 9/11 revisited.com. Check it out. It shows all of the mainstream media's reporting the day before on the 11th, and everybody basically saying bombs went off. Bombs! Okay, well, there's detonations of thermites that cut all the steel into compact 30-foot pieces so that it can be hauled away by FEMA with Giuliani's blessings. And then there was this other thing. Now, I was sitting there reading an article, which I won't go into, but I just basically say I was reading this article. And in my mind, I'm like, wow, this Google thing is great. I love it, right? So in my mind, I said, but man, if I think about it, if I can think about these things, let me Google it and see if somebody else is thinking it. And sure enough, I was thinking about who killed JFK, right? And I thought JFK, 9/11. I wonder if they have any. And then I come to find out, lo and behold, I find out that George Bush Sr. was behind the invasion of the Bay and Pigs, and he was all teed off at JFK because they wouldn't provide air cover, and that the general General Grable happened to be, his brother happened to be the mayor of Houston, and so they gave JFK the whack. Boom. Then I understood. Then I realized, holy smokes! Not only that, but this is what Watergate was all about. Right? They were hiding the fact that the Texans and the Cubans had executed JFK because, for who? For Nixon. Why? Because Nixon, man, right? Pepsi, General Motors, which is on the list here, and all the other. General Motors, General Electric, and Zapata Oil, Bush, were teed off because the Cuban Revolution stopped the amount of profits they were getting in their socialist revolution.
And
So
it's
anyway,
a bad example.
Huh?
It's the bad example. That was the big worrying thing.
Yeah. So, anyways, I'm looking at that, and then all of a sudden I thought about, geez. And that was called, you know what that was called? If you Google it, you can read it. It's called Operation 40. Just Google and read. I'm not making nothing up. I can back everything with black and white paper, because I've learned a long time ago, you back it in print. Operation 40. Read it for yourself. And then all of a sudden I find out that the guy that killed Che Guevara was Felix Rodriguez, a personal friend of George Bush Sr.'s. Then his friend, another general by the name of Luis Posadas Corrales. Has anybody heard of that name? All right. Venezuela wants him back there for blowing up 173 people in a Venezuela airline. This is a personal friend of George Bush who has sanctuary in Miami. They refuse to send him back to Venezuela. Then I wonder why Hugo Chavez says, hey, we can do a 9/11 commission here and here. Why? Because they want him back. Why? Maybe he, being explosives expert, had something to do with blowing up the Twin Towers. So I thought about, well, geez, if I was CIA, there's all these operations I'm studying, Operation Gladio, all these false flag operations. I said, well, you know what? Maybe, let me see if there's an Operation 9/11. Right? Sure enough, I plug in Operation 9/11. I come up with the 9/11 Operation, a summary. And this was, and I want you to Google this for your own personal information, if you're concerned about yourself or your children and your future. There are people out here, and I'll tell you what I see as a conclusion. This young fellow over here asked me, well, we see all this, we know all this. What's going to stop it? So we apprehend these guys, right? We bring them forth. We bring them before the official federal institutions or state institutions, judiciary bodies or congressional bodies are not going to do any oversight whatsoever. They're not going to investigate themselves.
But these are the most highly protected people in the world. Man.
So
they're surrounded.
And those people that are really perpetrators are behind the scenes, and elements within governments have worked for them. So how do we bring them before? Once we bring them to justice, the first thing we do is we identify them. We identify the scam, the lie, right? And once we do that, then we find a means by which to bring them to justice, and they have to be tried for their crimes. This young fellow asked me, well, we went to get something to drink. Well, what do we do afterwards? I mean, what happens to stopping a whole other crew from getting in? Well, you know what? The next time the crew comes in, because if you have an informed population about what really went down, and this thing just resonates and spread information to millions of people knowing what the skinny was on this deal, the next time they're not going to believe it right from Jump Street. They're going to question everything. And then they're going to look for, we're going to look behind the closed doors, we're going to look for the same perpetrators, we're going to look underneath the rugs for the dirty rats. The filthy, scummy rats that murdered 3,000 people. And believe me when I tell you, I still have images and I'm watching in my head. I could have been there. And I'm not just saying it just as personal thing, but me and my family and I, we could have been dead. But I have images of those people that jumped out the building and fell to their death. They took a leap of faith. They didn't have nothing left to do. They had one alternative. We either sit here and wait for this fire to burn us up, or we leap to our deaths and get it over quick. That was forced on them. That was a choice they had to make on the moment. And you know what? How tall those buildings are. But then to think that all the rest of those peoples were incinerated in a second. 1,000,000 degrees heat. You can't even comprehend that. We're talking about the crime of the century, people. And you know what? There is indications that it's just the beginning. George Bush had the nerve to say on a radio program not too long ago that another one is coming, ladies and gentlemen. And we have our intelligence tell us, and it's going to dwarf 9/11. Now, there's another, I had a friend of mine in New York, a guy by the name of Michael King. He's the one that wrote the section for Michael Rupert on Operation Tripod. Right? As you see, I'm putting these over here because Tony's got a way of just shifting people around. Next thing you know, it's all gone. right? It's flying all over the place. But anyways, he does an analysis. He does. I said, Mike, I said, look, I've read Rubicon cover to cover. I've read hundreds of thousands of pages of documents in 6.5 years. I have told people anywhere I've lectured and talked, I am not a conspiratorial theorist. I am a quote-unquote coincidental expert. That should make you laugh, okay? I'm trying to lighten you up a little bit because they say, well, yeah, well, you know, he's either a conspiratorial or all these things happen by coincidence. There's not that many coincidences in the world. But I jokingly say I'm a coincidental expert. But I had asked my friend to do a simplification of that book right there, Crossing the Rubicon. And he does give a simplification. And I'm just going to read one part, because at the end of that book, Crossing the Rubicon, basically what Michael Rupert did in this book is he basically laid out all of the contradictions about 9/11. And at the end of the book, he wanted to know who was at the helm for the financiers in the background. And he basically had talked with a guy by the name of Don Arid, who works for the Department of Defense, and asked them, was there a maestro that was conducting 9/11? And basically, Maestro said, yeah, it was either one of those guys. Well, two of those guys were listed on that list that we showed you that were convicted in San Diego. And the one was Cheney. What's his first name again? Who? Dick Cheney. Dick Cheney and Eberhart. Ralph Eberhart, the general. Those two were at the helm. They were the maestros, so to speak. But here's what he wrote, and I told him, I said, look, can you simplify the thing for the people, for people can understand it? Can you put an article out and simplify it? And this is what he wrote. But I'm just going to read you the one section. It's called The Means, Dick Cheney and the Secret Service. As the 9/11 plot unfolded, it has been reported that Secret Service whisked Dick Cheney into an underground presidential bunker at 9:03. This establishes that the Secret Service was in the loop, given orders by at least 9:03, and almost certainly much earlier, as we will show. Former counterterrorism advisor Richard Clark writes, in Against All Enemies, Secret Service had a system that allowed them to see what FAA's radar was seeing. The Keene Commission, also known as the 9/11 Commission, would have us believe that the chain of command on 9/11 was a complex web. But in reality, the Secret Service has the authority to communicate presidential and vice presidential orders directly, I can read your mind, directly to the fighter pilots in the air.
In War Over America, a book commissioned by the Air Force documenting the morning of 9/11, it is stated that FAA contacted Otis Air Force Base, informing them Flight 11 was headed to Manhattan and had lost its identification signal by 8:30. This indicated Secret Service was in the loop by the same time or shortly thereafter, since they are able to see FAA radar screens in real time and FAA is reaching out to the military. There is no question that by 8:45, at the absolute latest, likely much earlier, Secret Service were in the decision-making loop. They were most likely in the loop after 8:15 when Flight 11 turned its transmitter off.
Basically, what the article says, and I'm just going to highlight it right now because we're going to show you we're going to leave you with some film here. We can get ready for all that film, which I'm sure you're already ready. Basically, what it says is that Cheney had 5 different drill operations going on. One called Northern Alliance, one called Operation Vigilance, 5 altogether. And there's these false flag, there's these live flies going on. They're supposed to be simulated drills, just like Tripod was simulated for September 12th. What they basically did is that they put, NORAD didn't know what the heck was going on, because there was all these drills supposed to be going on, but there was 2 planes that were not necessarily actually airlines, but in fact they were military planes. And did we show them how?
No,
okay, we're going to show you that military planes that were painted up to look like passenger airlines and were shooting cruise missiles. Okay, so we've been scammed. We've been scammed on the worst level, but we have to see it. So anyways, the point I'm saying is that Cheney was at the helm. Cheney's the point man for Rockefeller. And at this point, I think I've exhausted my argument. I think I've given you enough, and I want to leave you with just one thing here. Hold on a second. Did you? No. All right. In answer to the question about what we do. Now listen, I'm going to read you some quotes here. I'm forced to conclude that there is sufficient evidence to indict Dick Cheney, Karl Rove, and others close to the Wall Street gang of neo-Nazi coup d'etat. And others close to the Wall Street gang of a neo-Nazi coup d'etat on 9/11. Robert Steele, U.S. Marine Corps, infantry and intelligence officer, former CIA clandestine officer. After 5 years of talking to people in the intelligence community, in military, foreign intelligence agencies, people from the air traffic control community and the FAA, I came to the conclusion that what we saw on the morning of September the 11th was the result of a highly compartmentalized covert operation to bring about a fascist coup in this country. That was Wayne Madsen, former U.S. Navy intelligence officer, specialist in electronic surveillance and security. After 4 years of research, I am 100% convinced that the attacks of September 11th were planned, organized, and committed by the treasonous perpetrators that have infiltrated the highest levels of government. Lieutenant Colonel Guy Razor, MS U.S. Air Force, former instructor, Fighters Weapons School, and NATO Tactical Leadership Program. Who gained from 9/11? Who covered up crucial information? Who put out patently false stories in the first place? When you put all these things together, I think it's pretty clear that the highly placed individuals in the administration with all roads passing through Dick Cheney. Colonel Robert Bowman, U.S. Air Force, former head of Star Wars. Former head of Star Wars. PhD in aeronautics and nuclear engineering, recipient of the Eisenhower Medal and dozens of prestigious national awards. And this is the last one I'm going to leave you with. This whole thing was not engineered from a cave in Afghanistan. The evidence that Al-Qaeda is actually an arm of the U.S. government is voluminous. It's hard for people to believe that their government could be as insidious as this one is, but the evidence is there. You can't put anything past them. Daniel Hamburg, former congressman, who now is asking Congress to investigate FEMA's planned roundup of 400,000 dissidents in North America to be shipped off to 600 internment camps and put into boxcars with shackles. Ladies and gentlemen, we are watching the emergence of the Fourth Reich, and if there's anything we can do, I'm appealing to the potential intelligence of the next generation or within the next years to do something about it.